Last time on History Under the Cap, in the highland of southern Tanzania, an amateur naturalist submitted onto the edge of a vanished lake, and beneath it, one of the densest concentration of Stone Age tools ever discovered in Africa. Thousands of hand axes, the butchered bone of extinct giraffe and hippos, are shoreline visited and revisited by early humans for hundreds of thousands of years. But buried among those ordinary tools, archaeologists found something that did not belong. Hand axes nearly 30 centimeters long, far long for any particular task anyone had been able to identify. What were they for? And what does a site like Isimila actually tells us about the moment our ancestors began to think ahead, plan, and problem solve like humans? This is part 2 of Isimila, the Pillars of the Vanished Lake. Here is where Isimila became genuinely strange, even to specialists. Among the thousands of standard size hand axes recovered from the site, tools that fit comfortably into a human palm, shaped for cutting, chopping, and scraping. Archaeologists also uncovered a smaller but startling collection of giant hand axes. Some of these oversized tools stretched to nearly 30 centimeters in length, dramatically larger and heavier than anything a person would need for ordinary butchery or woodworking. The sheer size raises a question that decade later, and still today, we don't have a fully settled answer. Were they ceremonial, symbols display of skill or status, purpose built for some heavy duty task we haven't identified yet, or simply the byproduct of knappers working unusual large source stone and following the material rather than a fixed design in their mind. Isimila never gives up its secret easily, and the giant hand axes remain one of its most tantalizing open questions. Physical proof that even in the deep Stone Age, human or near human, behavior could be more elaborate, more puzzling, and more individually variable that we tend to assume. Finding an exact age of a Isimila has proven surprisingly difficult, and that difficulty is itself part of the story. Early researchers in the 1950s and 60s relied on a single uranium series, dates taken from bone material, which suggests an age of roughly 260,000 years. Later estimates, incorporating a broader read of the sedimentary sequence, pushed the picture back much further, with some of the tool-bearing layers not thought to fall between 300,000 and 500,000 years old, and the deepest lake sediment beneath them stretching back potentially as far as 900,000 years. More recent researcher teams, including archaeologists from the University of Bristol working on the modern Isimila Stone Age project, with some has returned to the site with contemporary dating techniques, specifically because of the chronology, taphonomy, and geological history of Isimila remains in their own word, poorly understood, and in urgent need to re-examination. And in other words, even now in the 21st century, Isimila does not finish revealing itself. Recognizing its significance, Tanganyika's colonial administration gazetted Isimila as a protected site in 1957. Under the Monument Preservation Ordinance, one of the earliest former heritage protection extended to a Stone Age site anywhere in East Africa. Today it stands as a registered Tanzanian National Historic Site, with a small on-site museum displaying original tools and fossils recovered from the surrounding gullies. Its exposed sediment and surface scatter of irreplaceable artifacts constantly vulnerable to further erosion, uncontrolled vegetation, and the passage of the very natural force that revealed it to us in the first place. The pillars that make it similar so visually spectacular are ironically the product of an erosive process that is still ongoing, still consuming the very archaeological record it once uncovered. And now, let's break few things about Isimila that surprise even people who think they knew their Stone Age archaeology. First, the name itself Isimila is believed to derive from a Hihi language phrase, Pep Smith, meaning something close to a place of permanent settlement. Local communities were describing this landscape as a place of long term human presence, long before archaeologists arrived with travels and sight grid and oral memory. Second, and this tripped up almost every casual visitor. The towering sandstone pillar that makes Isimila look like some kind of lost city and are not ancient structure at all. They were never built, carved or arranged by any human hand, ancient or modern. They are pure erosion, sculptured entirely by wind and rain acting as soft sediment rock over an exposed period. The same natural process, just a different climate and continent, behind formation like Breeze Canyon in the American Southwest. Third, the sheer density of tool at Isimila is almost unmatched anywhere else on the continent. This wasn't a single hunting trip or a single generation discard pile. The accumulated evidence point to repeated, sustained occupation of the same lakeside zone across an enormous span of time. Humanist group returning to a productive location again and again. The same way a modern fishing community might return to a reliable stretch of coastline for centuries. Fourth, and this is where popular tourism materials sometimes get a little lost with the number. You will find sources online quoting Isimila age anywhere from 60,000 year to nearly a million year old. That's not sloppy research so much as it reflects genuine ongoing scientific debate. Different sediment layer at the site span vastly different time period, and older tourism-oriented estimates haven't always kept pace with newer geological dating work. The truthful answer is less tidy than a single number. And finally, the giant hand axe we mentioned earlier have occasionally been mythologized in popular retelling as evidence of giant humans who once lived in this region. There is no scientific evidence whatsoever for oversized hominins at Isimila. The tools are large, not their maker. It's a reminder of how easily archaeological mystery can cradle into folklore if we are not careful to separate what the evidence actually show from what makes a more thrilling campfire story. So, why does any of this matter beyond the boundary of one quiet valley in southern Tanzania? Because Isimila isn't just a pile of old rock, it's a rare, detailed window into behavior. And behavior is the hardest thing of all to reconstruct from the deep past. Bones tells us what our species look like. Tools, especially tools found in overwhelming quantity and in context alongside butchered animal remains, tells us that a species actually lived, thought, and solved problems. The Auckland hand axe itself represents a genius cognitive leap in the human story. A tool made not by chance, but according to a mental template. A shape held in mind and imposed on raw stone with intention and repeatable skill. Unlike the simple chopper tools of early humans, Auckland hand axe required planning several steps ahead, selecting the right stone, striking it in a particular sequence, and refining the edge symmetrically on both the sides. That's a form of forward thinking, structured problem solving that many researchers consider a meaningful maker of the road toward the kind of complex cognition modern humans rely on every day. Is similar with its staggering volume of these tools produced across hundreds of millennia, effectively give us a long running behavior record of that cognitive tradition being practiced, refined, and passed on, likely without a written language, without formal instruction, purely through observation and repetition. This site also anchored Homo erectus, and possibly later, related hominins population firmly into the deep interior of the African landmass, not just at the most famous Rift Valley site like Olduvai Gorge, but across the wider southern highland as well, reinforcing the picture of a species that was mobile, adaptable, and successful across a remarkable wide range of African environment, long before any humans ever left the continent. And the associate faunal remains, the extinct hippos, the strange short-necked giraffe relatives, help paleontologists reconstruct the ecological world these early humans were operating within. what pressure they faced, what prey was available, what a successful hominin's life actually looked like in practical, in ecological terms rather than in abstract. In that sense, Isimila does not just tell us about tools. It tells us about a way of life sustained at the same lake for a span of time so long that it dwarfed the entity of recorded human history many times over. The lake at Isimila is gone now, dried into memories and sediment, but everything it once held had outlasted it, sealed into layers of silt, only to be exposed again by the same relentless erosion that once carved the strange stone tower standing guard over the site today. When McLaren stumbled onto in 1951, turned out to be one of the richest behavior achiever of the early Stone Age anywhere in Africa. A place where for hundreds of thousands of years, early humans returned to the same patch of shoreline to hunt, to nap, to eat, and to leave behind without ever knowing it. An almost unbroken record of what it took to survive as a hominin on this planet. The giant hand axe are still unexplained. The full chronology is still being written by scientists working at the site right now. And the pillar kept eroding, slowly surrendering more to the past even as they threatened to erase it entirely. Isimila reminds us that human evolution does not happen in a single dramatic leap, in one cave, on one day. It happened in exactly this kind of quiet, repetitive, patient way. The same lake, the same shoreline, the same careful strike of a stone against a stone, practiced for longer than most of us can genuinely comprehend. If Olduvai Gorge is often called the cradle of mankind, then perhaps Isimila deserved to be remembered as something quieter but no less essential. The workshop where that mankind learned, slowly and stubbornly, how to think ahead. So, in our next episode, we are heading back towards the rift itself, to a site whose name has become almost synonymous with the very origin of our species. So, if you don't want to miss where this story goes next, make sure you are subscribed because the deeper we dig, the more it becomes clear. We are still, in every sense, standing on the shoulder of a lake that does not exist anymore. Until then, be curious and keep questioning with history under the cap.